Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the General Electric P42 Genesis engines. Very famous here on in the Northeast that Amtrak uses. And we're going to talk about it because Atlas just released a whole bunch of P42s in a couple of different phases with matching Amfleet cars, and we picked up a set. So we have actually the Phase 6 cars, and we're going to look at that and the engine and go over some of its features. But we'll do just a little bit of information on the P42s themselves. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. So let's get started. All right, so let's talk about the Genesis by itself first of all before we look at the model. So these are obviously made by GE, General Electric, obviously. And these are sort of the replacement engines or locomotives that took over, for the F40 PHs, F59s, P30 CHs, etc. Right? So this was sort of the next generation of locomotives to replace those. And they actually came in three different models when you use the word Genesis, right? So we had the original P40 DC models, the P32 AC DM models, and then this is the P42 DC that you're looking at in front of you here. They were all built between 92 and 2001, so I mean these are over a decade old now at this point. And these will be, or they've actually started already to phase these out and replace these particular engines. But obviously there's still a lot on the rails today. They're not completely phased out. And Canada, actually on BioRail, actually has 21 of these that they're using up on their railroad too. So, they'll be around for a while, but they are, sort of being phased out with the Siemens Chargers. So those locomotives are replacing these Genesis series locomotives. All right, so I always like to talk about unique things about any kind of locomotive that, some kind of design aspect that makes these unique. And so even the Genesis have sort of some unique design aspects to them. One of them is that they were a locomotive that used a single monocoque car body design. And basically, it made it lighter. It was more aerodynamic and efficient, but it also made it more costly to repair, especially if there were any kind of collisions. And so what they did is they actually changed them so that the front sort of nose cones bolted on, and they could easily replace them in the event of some kind of collision or something like that. Because like I said, it was a single monocoque body. So that's something that is sort of unique to these. But again, it made it lighter and more aerodynamic, so that obviously that makes it more fuel efficient. The other thing about these that was unique is they were actually one of the lowest height locomotives on the Northeast corridor here. They were actually around 14 inches lower than the previous F40s. So up on the Northeast corridor here, we have a lot of tunnels, old tunnels. So it made being able to go through all those types of tunnels and everything much easier than the previous locomotives. And so you could obviously go through them a little bit faster through some of our really low profile tunnels that are on the Northeast corridor here. The Genesis are powered by 4-stroke diesel engines. So on the P42s, actually it was P40s, 42s were V16s, 4-stroke engines, and the P32 ACDMs were the V12 4-stroke cycle engines, and they were turbocharged. And then obviously powering the traction motors on the trucks. All right, so obviously this is a modern engine, and so because of that, the Genesis units were completely computerized locomotives that had some automatic controls on them and onboard functions that made them much more reliable. So for instance, it could actually reduce power in the event that it saw like the engines were overheating, or it had low oil pressure or water pressure, or anything like that the computer sensed, right? And then they could reduce power, and that would prevent damage to the engines and the locomotive. So being fully computerized obviously made them a lot more reliable. All right, so the P42s, like you're seeing here, had a higher overall maximum speed than the P40s. So these got up to 110 miles per hour. But we don't really use that kind of speed in the Northeast Corridor here. It can't handle it. So the 42s are, used mostly on the long haul and higher speed rail services outside of the Northeast Corridor and the lower Empire Corridor. So, but again, these are all going to be replaced on the long distance services with the Siemens 42 Charger locomotives, right? And that's already started. I think that started way back in 2021. Right, as they're being phased out and replaced. Now, like I said, Via Rail in Canada still uses the P42s, and right now I don't think there's any plans for any kind of successor to those. So those will be running for who knows, indefinitely until they come up with a different locomotive for those. But basically the 42s, because they have the higher capability for speed. But they'll never reach those kind of speeds here if they're ever running on the Northeast Corridor. They have to be outside the corridor because the rails just can't handle it. Not seeing in this particular model, but like I said, there were 3 models of the Genesis, and the P32 AC DM is unique in that, unlike this model, which just ran on DC current to the motors off the diesel engines, right? The P32s were dual mode, which basically means they could run either way. So they could run off the regular diesels to the motors, or they could run off AC current off the third rail. So obviously these are used more within the metropolitan area in New York and the Northeast Corridor, where some of the tunnels, right, they can't have the diesel locomotives, because the tunnels are so small and tight with the fumes and everything that happened with the diesel locomotives, right? So they run electric third rail on those, and that's what that model was used for. So, but that's unique in that particular model on the P32s. The other twos, the P40s and the 42s, are the diesel electrics. So those would always run off the diesel power. So, but the dual mode locomotives gave them that flexibility. So that gave them that flexibility. Although there's only 18 of those were actually made. So P42s, we had about 207 produced for Amtrak, and like I said, 21 for Via Rail. And then the P40s originally had about 44 of those produced. But a couple of those, I think there were 10 to 15 of those were actually upgraded to P42 specifications. Now, there's been a lot of units that have either been sold to other railroads or already scrapped. So it's kind of all over the place with these Genesis models. You'll see them sort of all over the place. And then of course, a bunch of them were, repainted for the anniversary and put in these different phase livery schemes. So you'll see all these sort of heritage units around, right, with these different paint schemes on them. So I expect to see the Genesis around for quite a while yet before they're completely phased out. We don't see them on the rails anymore. But yeah, just a solid engine that Amtrak's been using for a long time, and very efficient, very low maintenance, can pull a lot of cars, and it doesn't need a lot of helper engines. That's the other thing. So unlike the prior engines, these Genesis engines don't require multiple units to pull the same amount of cars. So another advantage to them. So yeah, just I think a really solid engine, and unfortunately they've come to the point where they need to be replaced, and so the Siemens Chargers are going to be their replacement. Now, if you've seen the Siemens Chargers, they I'm not saying they look identical, but they're similar in shape, right? They're kind of a similar shape locomotive as far as aerodynamics and things like that, but that's sort of the next generation locomotive that's going to be replacing all these. So it's really cool to see Amtrak do these in these anniversary phase schemes here, these paint schemes. This is number 108. This is a real paint scheme that you're seeing right here. So let's jump into the model and take a look at what Atlas has done here. All right, so like I said, Atlas just recently released these. These are out in your shops, hobby shops now. They are going to be very limited in quantity, so if you didn't pre-order one and you want to get one, you'll want to go on Atlas's website, check out all the different phases that you can choose from, and then pick one, and then you'll have to do start a search on those. Now, I think your best bet at this point is probably Train World. They seem to have like some units in stock still, and that's where I got the passenger cars, which we'll show you in a second here. But the engine I actually bought at Just Trains, and these are they're not too bad in price. Now remember, these are full scale Genesis models, and so MTH really is the one who made these engines, and Atlas bought the tooling for these. So they're the same engines that MTH has been making. They have MTH DCS PS3 in them. There's really no difference. They're just being, released under the Atlas name now. But otherwise, they're the exact same engines as the MTH Genesis that were released prior from MTH themselves. So it has all the standard PS3 features on it, and yeah, like I said, if you want any of these, especially the cars, you're going to want to jump on that right away, so you can locate if you want matching passenger Amfleet cars to go with it. Atlas did make it. So what's nice, Atlas made all these different schemes, these phases, and then they made matching Amfleet cars to go with it. Even though some of the phases, Amtrak didn't actually paint matching Amfleet cars, but they still made them, and I do like that, because I always like sets that match across the board. They just look great when they're running down the rails in my layout, when you have an engine and passenger cars that all match in the same scheme. So it's really nice that they did that. So even though I believe the phase 6 here that you're seeing did not have matching Amfleet cars, Amtrak never painted matching Amfleets to go with it, unless somebody tells me different, but I don't know of any. But if anybody does know that or has seen them, definitely tell us in the comments below or post a picture. But I believe they did not. So but Atlas did make them to match, and they look fantastic. You'll see them in a second. All right, so yeah, the model itself is super detailed in its scale, and this is the one difference between the Atlas/MTH models and the Lionel Lion Chief models, which are much smaller, not scale. The Lion Chief Plus models, I think they're Plus 2 models, they actually look a little sort of stubby. They're like, they look too short, and they just don't, they're not the full scale size. So I don't believe Lionel has ever done a full scale Genesis model. MTH is the only one that's done it, and now Atlas has followed up with their tooling. So, but yeah, so let's take a closer look at this. All right, so you've got the front nose here, right? Obviously, we got headlights and we got ditch lights, and the cabin is lit. There's figures inside the cabin on both sides. This is, of course, number 108 here. It's got the Amtrak logo on the front. You got some nice details. You got brake hoses and everything on the front here. It does have an electrocoupler on the front, so pretty standard. Down the side here, they've got some great grille detail on the sides of these, which I really like. And they're not just molded in grills, like you can actually see through them, which is really cool. So we got the grills at the top. You've got the two silver ones on the front, and then the ones that get painted the same as the body there. Of course, you have this great Amtrak Connecting America for 50 Years Phase 6 paint scheme on here. The 108, they've got, again, great see-through grills on the bottom here in the back. Okay, and then the trucks. Now, the trucks have some detail on them. They're not sprung or anything like that, so they're all cast one-piece trucks, but they do have some really nice little details molded into the casting, so that's really good. Fuel tanks, so And then on the top of the locomotive, again, a lot of detail. Now this, of course, has this stands out, of course, because of the red nose on it on the front here. But you can see all the detail on the top here with the horns and everything else. Of course, it does have a smoke unit to simulate the diesel output, and then fan on the back here. And again, I like that these fans are see-through. Okay, not that I want to see the electronics inside, but it just makes it look so much more realistic when it's just not a molded piece, and it actually has it goes through like the real fan would. Okay. And then on the back here, let me actually disconnect the cars here for a second. Okay, you got the rear lights and everything on the back here, electrocoupler, of course, Amtrak logo on the back. So really nice overall, right? It's got a lot of nice detail, and overall, when you look at it in person, the size of it is really nice, just being a full-scale Genesis model. So I've always liked these Genesis models from MTH. They've always been great. I actually have a Phase 3 one sitting over on the shelf that I've never had matching cars for. So this is really nice that I have this with the full matching set. So all right, so let's take a look at the matching Amfleet cars. All right, so Atlas released a 5 cars total that you can get if you would like to for the Amfleet matching cars that go with each of the phases. So if you go on their website, you can see there'll be 2 numbers that you'll need if you want the full set. So they have the 4-car set, which is, you know, just the 4-pack of 3 coaches and 1 food service car. And then they have 1 additional coach car that you can buy separately. So a total of 5 if you want them all. And then I don't know, maybe in the future they'll make more, or that's all that's going to be. But for right now, we have 5 total that you can get for each of the phases. So this is obviously the first car, and you can see this paint scheme matches the engine, which is really nice. Blue happens to be one of my favorite colors, just by coincidence. And I'm not a huge fan of like deep dark navy blues, the ones that almost look like they're black in color. I really like these sort of medium type blues, which is what this particular livery is in, so really nice. But yeah, these are all fluted ribbed cars, which is super nice. I really like those. And it's got the great logo on the coach cars here, right? Has a little, I don't know if you can read it right there, but it just says coach class, right? And of course, each car has an individual number on it. These do have semi-detailed interiors, and what I mean by that is the seats and everything are one solid color, but then they do have actual painted figures inside the cars, which are really nice, right? This is all LED lighting, so, but I'm glad I don't have to tear them apart and put passengers inside the cars themselves. But the seats and everything are not individually painted a different color than, like, say, the floor or something like that. It's just one solid sort of cream color for the seats, and then the passengers. But at least the passengers are painted and they're in there, so that's a good feature on it. And then at the end of the car right here, we have a bigger Amtrak logo. And of course, you got the standard detail on the roof and everything, but the roof is all fluted also. Now what's really nice about these is it matches the locomotive exactly with the blue going down the sides, and then it has this white stripe that separates the blue from the black roof, which is the same thing on the locomotive here. You've got the white stripe, you got the blue here, and then you got the black roof, so that's really nice. And then down below here you have this dual stripe right here of white and red, which they also carried over onto the cars. So everything matches all the way down the line. So you'll get 3 of these coach class cars right here. Again, all individually numbered. And then you'll come over here to a different car. So this is the food service car. And it'll have a little food service thing at the top here. Little thing that says cafe right here. And then, of course, you have this standard Amtrak logo that you would have on the back of the other coach cars. So instead of having the 50th year one right here, they just have Amtrak at the end. But then because it's the food service car, right, they have that middle section has no windows because that's where the bar would be inside there and everything. And then they put a big 50th anniversary logo right in the middle of that one. So this one's a little bit different. And then at the other end right here, they just put the car number again here and then food service car. So it doesn't have an Amtrak logo. It's on the other side. Okay. Otherwise, the car is identical, right? Except for the fact that it has this center section where there's no windows, right? And then, of course, you'll have the remaining coach cars. And then if you decide to, you can buy the one extra coach car. So a total of 5. Then the bottom of the cars, you know, has a lot of detail hanging off of it. So the trucks have some nice detail on them. They have it's hard to see in the camera here. Hopefully you can see that. There's a little detail right here. There's some spring detail right here. So these are actually real springs inside here. So not just molded in. And then you have all the units on the bottom here, like for the AC units and everything else hanging down. So the bottom of the trucks have a lot, the cars here have a lot of detail on them too, not just on the sides. And of course it's got the vegetables in between here, which are flexible. So yeah, I really like these matching cars, and I'm so glad that Atlas did that when they released these engines. So we got power on the rails here, and actually the interiors are really brightly lit on these. Really nice. So, you know, some LEDs can be dimly lit on the inside, and these are just really brightly lit, which is really nice. And then they have these two on the end of each passenger car, these 2 red markers. So that's really cool too. So yeah, so lit up, the passenger cars look great. Alright, so let's start her up and check her out. Sounds great on these.
Dispatch, we're in the clear.
It sounds really good on these horns, the way they faded in and out. Check out any of the custom sounds here. I'm not sure what they are yet, so let's see what they are.
Let's have the same run today. Roger that.
Single toot.
Now arriving on track 2. Train number 42, the Pennsylvania.
I don't know why I would say that, because that doesn't really go with 108. So that's kind of strange, but...
Now departing on track 2. Train number 42, the Pennsylvania. This stop is Philadelphia. This stop is Paoli. This stop is Lancaster. This stop is Harrisburg. This stop is Tyrone. This stop is Tyrone. This stop is Altoona. This stop is Latrobe.
Alright, so all the custom sounds are pretty much the stops, which are all local stops here in the Northeast. So the only thing that's kind of strange is the arriving and departing. So I guess it could technically be labeled 42, right? Just because the number on the side is 108 doesn't mean that's not the actual train route that they're using, but that's what they have for the custom sounds for the arriving.
Now arriving on track 2. Train number 42, the Pennsylvania.
So that's just the way it is on these. And then they have the regular forward signal, reverse signal, crossing signals, so... so let's give it a run around, see what it looks like. So everything works perfectly. The only thing I can find with this engine is if you listen very closely, you can hear sort of a buzzing, rattling, and that's from the sounds, right? But watch what happens when I just squeeze it a little. It goes away, right? I've experienced this on other MTH engines before where the speaker is actually rattling the shell a little bit, and the shell is actually touching another piece of plastic on the inside. They're barely touching, and it gives you that buzzing sound. So I've fixed this before on other engines, and all you really do is you take the shell off and you put a little piece of foam just between the shell and whatever it's touching, and it eliminates that little buzzing. So that's the only complaint I have about this engine. So it does have that little buzzing, especially when you're doing the horn or something, because then you can really hear it. Whereas if I hold my fingers, it goes away. So it's just plastic rattling, basically. So all I'm going to do is I'll fix that by taking the shell off. I'll be able to see underneath where the speaker is and then where it's sort of rattling and everything like that. And a small piece of foam will fix that. But otherwise, everything's functioning perfectly. That's the only complaint I have about it, is just the little buzzing sound. So no big deal on that one.
waiting till next order. Let's go to the office and mark off. Roger that.
Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed that video on the Amtrak Genesis P42. In this case, the Phase 6 50th anniversary edition here. Great paint scheme. I love this particular Phase 6. And Atlas did a fantastic job on this engine. Of course it is an MTH engine really, made still the same way as it was before with the Genesis. But again, I like these because of their full-size scale, and again, the paint scheme on this one to have matching Amfleet cars in the set is, great. So highly recommended. Now these, these are very limited in their quantities. So if you're thinking about picking up one of these, you want to do it now because they won't be around. The Just Trains where I got this one already sold out of their engines, and if you want the matching Amfleet cars, you got to go find those really quickly. I know when I picked up my set, it was at Train World, and I forget the quantities, but I think they only had 9 left or something in the phase I was looking for. So, yeah, you want to get out there and grab them now if you're interested in these engines and these Amfleet cars. So, but yeah, great set, highly recommended, and I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, put your comments down below, and I will see you guys next time. Peace, guys.